Hi, I'm Brittney Saunders, and welcome to Big Business, the place where business is far from boring. And today I'm recording on Gadigal land. I somehow built an empire from my garage, and I'm here to share it all with you, from the wins, the huge mistakes, the challenging times, and funny moments in between. So whether you're in business already, wanting to start, or not even in the game at all, and you're just looking for some inspiration, or you want to hear the tea, this is the podcast for you. Coming up in today's episode, we're diving deep into the hiring side of business. And in my case, it's a little different with the added element of being a public figure. It's one thing in itself to hire a new employee. That's a whole thing in itself. It doesn't matter who you are or where you come from. But what do you do when that employee has followed you on social media and potentially has a different perspective of you? How do you manage to set a boundary in place? And what happens if that employee slips up and you have to have a serious word with them, or worse, let them go? This topic is one I will probably revisit a million times throughout my podcast episodes, as it's deep. But anyway, time is money, so let's get down to business. Now, I want to start out this episode with a disclaimer for all employees of Fate. I don't know if any of you are listening. Listen at your own risk. That is my disclaimer. I just wanted to throw that out there. Now, on a more serious note, a proper disclaimer for all Big Business episodes, not just this one. I'm obviously going to be talking about my experiences as a business owner, even the shitty parts, because business is shit more often than you'd think. And I feel like nobody really talks about that. I was actually just saying on my Instagram story the other day how excited I am to have this podcast, because on Instagram and TikTok, we really do only show the highlights. We show the fun, what we get up to at work. We're doing all these crazy videos. And when it comes to social media, I find it not the easiest platform to be able to share my thoughts in depth. So I just wanted to say, as a whole, for this episode and every episode, I completely respect all Fate employees, past and present, and trust me, I've had some people push me to the absolute limit. And I know I've said I'm going to be spilling the tea on this podcast, which I absolutely am, but this isn't going to be a podcast where I'm going to be slandering or disrespecting anyone or dragging anyone's name through the dirt at all. At the end of the day, I am a professional and I do respect people that work for me and people that have worked for me. But at the same time, I am wanting to share my experiences as a business owner. Getting on with it, most of you would know my story by now. I work full-time and quit my job at the age of 21, and for many years after that, I was a full-time YouTuber and influencer. And in my mid-20s, I launched my business Fate. After that, I would then navigate the transition from influencer to business owner and boss. But the big question is, how the fuck do you even be a boss anyway? This certainly isn't something that I knew how to do. You don't just naturally know how to be a business owner and a boss. That's not something that anyone is born with. It's not something they teach you in school. Maybe now, I don't know, school could be different, but I certainly didn't learn any of that in school. And I even did business studies. I don't even remember what I did. I think we had to do a little project of making a pretend business. So who knows? Maybe I was setting myself up for the future. One thing that you can be is a natural leader, and I think that's definitely what I am. You can also learn to become a leader, but I think some people have got that natural leadership instinct in them, and I think that's something that I definitely had from a really young age. But you don't just know how to be a boss and a business owner straight off the bat. No one does. When it comes to being a business owner and people's boss, you quite literally learn everything as you go. And if I'm being honest, you learn by making mistake after mistake after mistake. And then by making those mistakes, you learn to do better next time until you eventually become good at it. That's literally all being a business owner is, fucking it up over and over again until you finally get it right. But I guess the question is, do you ever really get it right, ever? Looking back, the one thing I didn't do when I started Fate was take myself or the business seriously. I think this is something that every single entrepreneur will experience. Because let's be real, how are you supposed to take yourself and your business seriously when it's just this tiny little thing that you're winging from the garage and your spare bedroom? So why am I mentioning this anyway? I didn't realise it at the time, but because I didn't take my business seriously at the beginning, which is fine, I didn't realise the importance of needing to hire people who also took my business seriously. So, like many other owners, the early days of Fate were filled with me making poor hiring decisions. The easy decisions. I hired friends, family, distant relatives, friends of friends, the lot. Recommendations off whoever would give me one. And why did I do that? It seemed easier and honestly fun. There were so many things that I didn't know at that part in my journey. I feel like I've said this a billion times, but I'm telling you, I had no idea what I was doing in any area of business, but most people start that same way. I didn't know how to properly hire people. I didn't know the importance of having a proper interview and screening process. I'd quite literally just hit someone up that I'd known from years ago and be like, hey, do you want a job? And they'd be like, sure. And I'd be like, cool, you start tomorrow. Come on in. There was no structure to anything that I was doing. And because I didn't take my business seriously, it was so much easier for me to just hire people that I knew. It honestly seemed fun. And don't get me wrong, it was fun at the time. And I didn't realise that I was making these wrong decisions. But I wish I could go back and ask my past baby business self, do I want to have fun by hiring friends and family? Or do I want to take this thing seriously and hire people who are serious about my business and about me? Now, every business is different. I know businesses that are owned by two best friends and best friends. Best friends. Some businesses are owned by two best friends, and I always look at that and think, how are they managing to make that work? I know some businesses are family-run businesses and the whole family's in on it. But for me, friendships and family don't mix with my business. But in saying that, I work with AJ, my partner, and I've had so many people that are in business say to me, oh, I don't know how you do that. Like, me and my partner could never work together. It's all about finding out what works for you and what your boundaries are when it comes to who you're going to be working with. The first, I'm going to say 3 years of Fate are what I like to look at as a trial period for me as a boss and those early hiring days. I'd say the first 3 years, it was just the trial period for me. I was on my trial shifts. I actually saw a TikTok last night of an older guy who is in real estate, and he said, any business, you got to give yourself 20 years to get to the good point. I'm like, oh my goodness. But for me, 3 years was the trial period. I was hiring whoever was keen with little to no structure again because I had no idea what the fuck I was doing. Now, for those of you that are in business, or if you're new to it, or maybe you're thinking of starting one day, please know that for the first few years of your business, you're basically going to be doing everything wrong. And that is completely normal. With me being a new boss, not knowing how I was supposed to treat employees, not knowing how to properly set boundaries, not knowing the importance of policies and procedures, not knowing anything, I dealt with a handful of stuff that would be great lessons for me in the future. I went through what I'm sure a lot of others would, and it was my way too nice phase in those early days of Fate when it came to staff, which I feel is natural for most of us. I like to think I'm a nice person, so my natural instinct was to be super nice to my first few employees and essentially treat them like they were my good mates. I had no boundaries set in place at all because I was none the wiser. So by being super nice and treating everyone like we were all best mates, what are some of the things that happened to me in this time? I had staff that were working in my store that were doing absolutely fuck all. They couldn't even keep the place clean. And I was too nice that I didn't even have it in me to know how to say, hey girls, would you mind giving the store a clean? That's how nice and I guess scared I was. I also had staff give a multitude of customers poor service, and I received a bunch of complaints and negative reviews. And because I was in my too nice era, I had no idea how to handle this because I hated conflict. See, now I would crack down, but this is me in 2019. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm friendly with these girls. It's like we're friends. We would hang out on the weekend and have drinks together. So then because I had these friendship vibes happening and then, just say my store's an absolute mess and the racks are all upside down, how do you then interject yourself into that friendship and be like, hey, by the way, like the store looks trash? And I think this is something that a lot of business owners would deal with, is being too friendly in the beginning and then not having that assertiveness in the workplace, because it's almost like, don't tell me what to do, like we're friends, So it's just a really interesting thing. I think one of the biggest examples, and there's probably a lot, of me hiring someone who was perhaps a bit of a fan and not setting those boundaries in place is one time many, many years ago, I had an employee get really angry at me and kind of blew up at me that I didn't invite her to my birthday. And it was at that moment in time that I went, shit, this doesn't make sense to me. I think there's something a little wrong here. Anyway, speaking of conflict, are you someone that hates conflict or tough conversations? I feel like most of us do. We avoid tough conversations or telling someone how we really feel because at the end of the day, we just want to make people happy, right? It's a bit of a people-pleasing thing, I think. I think a lot of people would say, oh, I don't like conflict, like I avoid it at all costs. Well, a fun fact about being in business is that you'll eventually learn to kind of love conflict. And not in a bad or evil way where you're like, fuck yeah, I can't wait to fire someone. But over the years, I've gone from being that young girl that was too scared to tell her staff that they weren't doing the best job to now a woman who almost thrives off that shit. And you become really fearless in business. And that's one of the best things that I've personally gained from doing this for so many years is I've gone from being like, oh, I don't want to tell her that she got a bad review because then she's going to get upset. Like you get so worried about people's feelings. But with all the experience I have now, I'll happily go and sit down and be like, hey, obviously in a nice way, but be like, hey, we've got this bad review. Like, do you want to chat about it? And maybe I can hear your side. Whereas I never would have done that in my mid-20s because I would have been too petrified. And as I said in episode 1, hard conversations, easy life, right? I'll save the entire topic of tough conversations for a future episode because that's a whole thing in itself. So what else happened in my 2 nice days? I had people steal from me, multiple people. I had people constantly show up late every single day. And I was too scared to say anything about it. And I remember in one instance, I finally built up the courage to sit someone down and say, hey, you're being late way too often. And I remember this person saying, and again, I'm not dragging anyone through the dirt, but I remember this person saying to me, that's just who I am. Like I'm just late to everything. And back then I was like, oh, okay. But now I'd be like, well, that's not a personality trait. You start at this time, you need to be there at this time. But I didn't have that confidence in myself back then to say that. And if you're in business and you're new and you're a bit like that, it's okay. But remember, it's your business. You need to be confident in yourself and you need people showing up to work on time. It's so disrespectful if people don't. Now, it's safe to say those first few years of Fate and hiring a lot of the wrong types of people for my business taught me a lot. I think the biggest takeaway from it all was that there is such thing as being too nice of a boss. I want to be a cool boss. I want to be the best boss that people have ever had. I want people to come and work for Fate and be like, wow, like what a breath of fresh air to have Brittney as my boss. But at the same time, I still want to have those boundaries in place and have people respect me. My lesson from it all was that if you're too nice, people will absolutely take the piss. And it goes the other way as well. If you are an absolute asshole of a boss and you treat your staff like shit, they will also then take the piss. You can't be too nice because people will take the piss. You can't be too much of an asshole because people will also take the piss out of spite because they hate you, and rightly so. So it's all about finding that middle ground in terms of what kind of boss you want to be. And despite all that, in those early years, we had an absolute blast, and I never thought at the time that I'd made the wrong decisions with who I hired at the time. It wasn't until years after that or the year after that. It's not until you look back that you go, wow, like I don't think those people were the right fit for my company. The thing with business is you'll never stop learning year after year. And it's crazy because you think you get to a point where you've got it all worked out. Like, for example, me right now, 2024. I'm like, yep, this is the best version of myself I've ever been. I'm the best at being a boss. Oh, I look back at 2023 and I'm like, ooh, that's embarrassing. But then I bet you $1 million in 2025, I'll look back at the way that I'm doing everything now and think I'm doing it all wrong at this moment in time. You never stop learning and growing. So, on to the more juicy stuff. Hiring fans. Disclaimer, I don't like using the word fans. I would never say, oh, my fans. I don't like saying my supporters, even my followers, because at the end of the day, as you know, I'm just a normal gal from Newcastle. I think we're all the same. But just for the context of the pod, I'm going to use the words fans and followers. So what is it like to hire your fans? Well, let's start with the old saying, never meet your idols. Not that I'm any kind of idol. I mean, I might be someone's idol.
My idol.
I'm Xander's idol. But you know the saying, never meet your idols. I feel like I could say the same kind of saying for me, but instead of don't meet your idols, it's don't work for your idol. And why is that? Now, it's crazy to say, but the person that I am online, the person that you see in my videos, maybe even the me that I am right now on this podcast, is not the same person that I would be as your boss if you came to work for me. They are two completely different people. Why? What I do online is a form of entertainment. Yes, it's me in the videos on Instagram and on TikTok. And yes, that's who I am. I'm not pretending to be someone else. But when you're creating content for social media, it's a performance. It's quite literally a made-up performance. It's an act. Even when I post stories every single day, as natural as they come across because it's me just sitting at my desk at home talking shit, it's still an unnatural act because I've gotten out my phone, I've thought about what I'm going to say, I put the phone down, I press record, and then I start talking. There's actually nothing candid about making an Instagram story. It's still thought out. And with content online, it's all so well thought out. And I guess the end goal of content is to entertain people, make them enjoy what they're watching, and essentially it's set out to make people enjoy me as a person. We want people to like us when they watch our content on social media. Am I exposing content creators here? I feel like I'm not. Surely everyone knows by this point, social media is fake. I'm not saying I'm fake, but you know, it's fabricated. It's put together. It's all a show. On my social media, I'm entertaining you. And now when someone comes to work for me, I'm not an influencer at work. I'm not there to entertain them. I'm not there to be my funny self that I am in my Instagram reels. And I often wonder, by posting what we do post on social media, do people think that that's what it's like if someone comes to work for me? Because it's not at all. When I'm someone's boss, I'm not there to be an influencer. I'm not there to entertain them. At work, I'm working and running a business. Now, all the fun and amazing and crazy stuff you see us do on social media is a few tiny snippets of our week. On social media, when I do post content at work, I get a handful of comments and DMs, sometimes even emails and LinkedIn messages, and they're often along the lines of, oh, I wish I could work for you. This looks so fun. I want to work at Fate. Oh my God, I wish you were my boss. I wish my boss was cool as you. Can I come and work for you? Are you guys hiring? And to that, I say a few things. Number one, it's super cool for people to think that of me and my workplace. Like, what a bloody nice thing for people to go out of their way to say, for someone to message me and say, you seem like a really cool boss. To that, I say thank you. Number two, I say, you're absolutely right. We do have a lot of fun at Fate. And number three, and this might be controversial, to that I also say, I would never hire someone if their motive for applying for the role was because they thought it looked fun on social media. And why is that? It's because I couldn't even begin to imagine the disappointment of someone coming to work at Fate if that was their number one motive, if they thought, oh, that looks so fun and she looks like a cool boss. It would hit them like an absolute ton of bricks. As much as Fate is a cool and fun and amazing place to work at, we work bloody hard. I was actually speaking at an International Women's Day event in Newcastle the other week, and at the end of my talk, I had audience questions, which is always really scary. What if no one puts their hand up? Or what if someone asks me a really weird question? But anyway, one woman put her hand up and she asked me a question that no one had ever asked me before. And it was along the lines of, how do you deal with having people want to work for you purely for the fact of wanting to work with you? And I said, that's a great question. No one's ever asked me that. So what have I done to manage that? How do we figure out if someone is applying to work with us because they genuinely want to do the job and they're passionate about the company, or if they're just wanting to apply to simply work at Fate and get amongst all the fun? And I guess there's a few things. Firstly, I don't play any part in our interviewing and hiring process anymore. For the first 4 or so years of Fate, I did all of the hiring, the interviews, everything. I screened all the resumes on Seek. I did the whole lot. And over time, I learnt that when I was in the interviews, and there was always someone else as well, it was like a 2-on-1 interview, I think I would sometimes, not all the time, but I would add an extra level of nerves to our interviews. Heck, even when I bump into people out and about at Coles or wherever, some people get nervous when they meet me in person. So I can't imagine if someone has followed me online for a really long time and they're coming to an interview that they're nervous for anyway, and then I'm sitting in there as well and they might feel nervous that, you know, they kind of know me. I noticed that I was making our interviews a little more intense, and it's something that I've actually completely stepped away from now, which is a hard thing to do as a business owner. It's hard to let things go. It's hard to give up that control. So what else do we do to figure out if someone's for real when it comes to the job, or if they're just a little bit of a follower? We determine this by how much of the interview is spent referencing to me. Now, I hope you all don't think I'm a bloody bitch after this episode, but this is just the reality of my job. This is something I quite literally deal with every single day. At Fate, we want people to work for us who are super passionate about our brand. We love it if they follow us as a brand online and have followed both mine and Fate's journey. I'm not saying I'd never hire someone who follows me. It's pretty likely that everyone that works for me probably follows me, but also if they don't, no offense taken at all. We want people that work for us to know our brand story and mission. So when people come into our interviews, we love when they rave about us and talk about all the amazing things they've seen us doing. But if the conversation is centered around me and perhaps a little bit too much around me, especially when I'm not in the room. For example, I've followed Brittney online forever. I've been watching her for 10 years. I watch all of her stories. I love her so much. I love AJ. If it goes in that kind of direction, that's kind of a telltale sign to us that maybe this is someone applying for the wrong reasons. Yes, we want people to love us, but there's got to be that line in the sand. I think at the end of the day, I wouldn't ever want to hire someone who was a huge supporter of mine forever, because I wouldn't want to ruin that for them. Again, I'm no celebrity at all, but I'd just hate to ruin that for someone if they ever came to work for me and I wasn't who they thought I would be. Because again, at work, I'm not an influencer or public figure. I'm simply just a boss. All in all, hiring people is one of the biggest parts of any business, and it's certainly the most challenging. I think most business owners would agree with me on that. If you ask me what is the hardest part of what you do, I'd say it's the people, the hiring, the firing, and staffing in general. I feel as if though you can control a lot of things in business, but the only one thing that you can't control, obviously, is people. And it's having people working in your business that will present you with some of the hardest challenges ever. Trust me, I've dealt with it all. And when you think you've dealt with it all, something else happens and you're like, surely not, this has to be it. Business is full of surprises, and so are the people that work for you. The journey from being an influencer to becoming a boss has certainly been an interesting journey, to say the least. It's a unique experience and an added element to my business journey. We have 60-odd employees now and counting. I've had many people come and go. It's part of it. There's another pod topic for down the track too, what it's like to have people quit their job within your business and the emotional roller coaster that comes from learning to accept that and move on from it. Do you hate rejection? If you do, don't ever bloody own a business. But that's a topic for another time. Anyway, my friends, that's a wrap on episode 3. How exciting. We're only 3 episodes in. I'm already loving it. I'll wrap up today's show with my tip of the week, which was a quote that I read. One of the heaviest habits to learn: take nothing personally. In life, but especially in business. When it comes to business, nothing is personal, even when it feels like it is. It's just strictly business. Make sure to please subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss out on an episode of Big Business. I upload new episodes every single Monday, and if you haven't already, by all means, go ahead and rate me 5 stars. Or 4, but... No, 5 only. 5 only. That's all we accept here. Oh, anyway, until next time, remember to chase after your dreams as if they owe you money.